Aplauso.
Wow, thank you. All of you coming for me. At least I come before. I'm the opening act, so I'm hopefully going to keep you a little bit entertained and go into some of the work that we've been doing at Truflation. What is Truflation? Truflation is the calculation of true inflation, taking real-world economic data and financial data and putting that as verified data sets on the blockchain as data streams, and then calculating using decentralized networks to be able to calculate and maintain indexes. And the main index is the inflation index. In Argentina, you know something about inflation. And it's getting a hell of a lot better. I think that's what you will see. But yeah, what do? We put it on the blockchain. We have over 100 different data sources that we use, and we put that on the blockchain. We have 30 million data streams that are now available across the different markets, from India to Argentina, UK, and the US. We started off in the US. Why did we do this? So we started off with the US market, and we started off because a certain person went out there and said inflation was transitory. I'm sure a lot of us remember that statement. They printed $11 trillion, shut down most of the economies, and said inflation is transitory. They printed more money in that period of time since 2021 than they printed over the last 200 years. And any economist will tell you that inflation can't really be transitory. And so as you can see here, in the US, they've experienced, or we have experienced in the US market, some 25% of inflation in the last 3 years, or 3.5 years. That's 0.25%. That's Argentinians, you have experienced a lot more before the US economy, which is roughly about 80% of global trade in the US dollar. That is a significant amount and has a significant impact. And we're seeing that backlash happen now. And in 2021, when we heard that statement, I looked under the carpet and we saw that the model that they were using to calculate inflation was over 100 years old. They were doing it manually with pieces of paper, going to the grocery stores. They were doing it 6 months late. They were going back and changing the data. So we said we can take a developer approach, leverage modern, decentralized technology to be able to build this. I've been in crypto or Bitcoin since 2013. I was the CEO of Bitcoin.com. I sort of knew one or two things about the blockchain and thought that ultimately this database can be used to actually aggregate this data, get it verified, and calculate a modern interpretation of what true inflation is. And that's what we did. So we did it on the US. We broke down, we didn't survey, so the government panels 1,000 households to identify how households are spending their money. We went to credit card companies. We used census data. We worked with big institutions like Nielsen and Kantar to identify how households are spending their money. So here you can see in the US, we have housing at 23%. And so this was the weighting. We broke it down into 12 different categories based on volatility of each of the items. And this is the basket that your average household in the US and how they spend the money. And so we had to take a different approach for Argentina. We started with looking at how is the Argentinian population broken down. What is the average male, female, average age? What are the income brackets across that age? And then ultimately the size of the market, urban, suburban. So we took all of those factors into account in our calculation and came up with this weighting. We didn't change the categories. The categories stayed the same across all nations that use Truflation. But the weighting changes. So here, you notice that 21% of expenditure in Argentina goes towards food. Only about 8% is in housing. Contrast that back to the US, if you remember, it was 21% housing and about 15% in the food category. So very different patterns that you're seeing. And so we use this weighting across those 12 categories to calculate Argentinian inflation. This is a year-on-year number. So this is a comparison between last year's prices across those 12 categories based on that weighting and what is it today in equivalent. And so you can see it's been coming down significantly since you've had your new elections, the new president take place, who will come and share more about his economic plans. But it's been coming down consistently. And you can see this, not only we are saying that, but you're also the INDEC, which is the national provider here in Argentina, is confirming that. You're seeing month-on-month decline on, this is month-on-month comparison. So remember the last one that we shared was year-on-year. We don't do month-on-month, we just do year-on-year comparison. But here you see month-on-month. So how much is the cost of goods changing this month compared to the same time last month? And so these are the different types of contrasts. And here you can see the different categories. And what we're seeing in Argentina, what's happening is the prices are coming down significantly on food. But they're slowly coming up on utilities. So I think you call them tarifas, right? So how is that moving and how are those adjusting to the market? And ultimately, those are the changes that are taking place, and that's how inflation's coming down. And how do we do this, and why do we do this, and how are we, Truflation, trying to be a lot more accurate than the government? In the US, the government actually only tracks 80,000 items. We track 10 million, maybe up to 20 million items for the US market alone. We have multiple different sources. And so in essence, we give this access of data to anybody that wants to access the network, either in a visual form or on the blockchain in its raw format. We have a wide range of coverage. We have 500,000 monthly active users that are actually subscribing and viewing all of this data on the on our website. And we have a number of subscribers actually paying for this data to be able to help them in the predictability of an economy. Why is inflation important? There is $5.5 trillion in debt outstanding by governments and companies that are tied to inflation. And inflation is the cost of capital, or there's an element associated in the cost of capital that is ultimately tied to that one single metric. So having a true, trusted, independent source of inflation, we believe, is really critical for any economy around the world. And so that's why we're continuing on this path. And I think Charles earlier was talking about how difficult it is to convince people on selling them on new ideas and breakthrough ideas. Nobody understood why we needed another inflation and independent inflation calculation. The government already does it. Why do we need that, right? And we just saw here in Argentina, the former economic minister was actually put in jail for fudging the inflation numbers. And so we've cleaned that up, and now so we still need an independent source of truth, and that's what we do. Here are some of the sources that we use in Argentina to calculate the Argentinian inflation. So you can see household names, Mercado Libre. Some of them are online. They have APIs, so we can pull them in, and we try to verify them through all the ultimate different sources. And we are trying to engage with the government to make available in real time a lot of these data sets. So there are over 1,200 data sets available that the government makes available in downloadable form. But it's manually downloadable. How do we automate this? How do we drive this in real time? And how do we make this available on the blockchain and compute a better, more accurate reflection of inflation in the Argentinian economy? And on that note, I'm hopefully going to hand it over to the leader of the Argentinian economy right now. And thank you very much for listening to Truflation.